There we go.
Yay!
Yay. I love it.
Voice is so low this morning.
I know. It's like I did a 3-hour yoga class. My diaphragm is really relaxed or something.
Yeah, it's
Ugh.
very low.
I know. Well, good morning.
Good morning. I am so excited to drink this. I'm using my enormous mug because I need that much coffee right
I
now.
love that. And I love that because I have our mug and it has water in it.
And I need the coffee. But yeah, no, I'm excited to have this coffee because I love okay, so the cat's out of the bag a little bit because I'm just going to say it is I did leave my bubble of a town and I went down to Vancouver and I know we're not supposed to do that because but I was very, I think, the word's not respectful. I was very, okay, obviously I'm out of it today. I drove yesterday for 5 hours and I'm still out of it. I stayed in a very isolated basement suite of my cousin's, like literally its own entrance, all that stuff, just so I could see my mother face to face. And I surprised her at work, masks on, all that kind of stuff. And it was worth every moment. And then I did something and I went and surprised Hero at his work. And there's a video of it around somewhere. No, just kidding. It's floating around the interweb. When we will definitely release that and show you the octave range that Hero has.
It was quite high.
Yes, it was quite high. But the reason I'm saying I'm so excited for this is because I love my cousin and she supplied coffee downstairs for me and everything, but it wasn't very good coffee. So this is not the last sip. This is the first sip.
Oh my God. And enjoy that first sip to filth.
Oh, so good.
What kind of coffee are you drinking?
Well, I think this one we kind of alternate, depends on what's in there right now. But there's a company called Frog Friendly Coffee. I'll plug them right now. They're actually very local to us in a tiny town, really close to Vernon in the Shuswap area, and it's an espresso that they make. But I do oat milk, so I didn't have my oat milk with me. Anyway, long story short, this is ideal. Yes.
Oh, amazing.
How are you?
Amazing. Well, I literally, again, just rolled out of bed. I actually looked because I set my alarm at 8:30 and I was thinking, oh, okay, I'll just snooze in for a bit. And then I'm thinking, oh yeah, I'll be on at 9. I'm thinking, Hero, the guest comes on at 9. Remember, like you talk before the guest comes on. I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, like
I've had a shower, of course.
exactly. Exactly. You also have longer hair though. If my hair was as long as yours, I would need to be a lot more prepared because like longer hair takes longer to get ready.
Well, it also looks, maybe I'm wrong with this, but it also looks greasier, quicker. Maybe that's wrong. I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't know, but I mean, like my hair, even like for my side, my hair is getting long, and that's not long hair at all. But my hair stays pretty short usually.
And a funny little little story. I hadn't. I'm just totally open here. I hadn't shaved my legs in quite a long time, so the hair on my legs is really long. And I'm like, it's about time that maybe I just do something about that. And because I'm blind, pretty blind without my contact lenses. When I have showers, a lot of the time I don't put my contact lenses in yet. So just imagine somebody who can't see and they're shaving. And then what do you think happens when you pop your lenses and you look down at your legs?
Did you get blood everywhere?
That's a good point. No, but there's just patches. It's like my lenses. I'm like, okay, yeah, I missed a lot of spots.
Oh, that's cute. Like a patchwork rug.
Yeah, totally, like a quilt. I don't know.
Amazing.
Yes, we probably see. Yeah, I just enjoy. Obviously, I still enjoy talking to you. We haven't introduced our guest who's on right this second.
Well, it's perfect. I can tell just by the angle that he's just getting the audio set up. So while he's doing that, I will introduce our guest and let him take it from there. But our guest is not a ceiling fan. It's not a painted ceiling, although it's a very gorgeous 3-pronged ceiling fan. That's a name. But our guest this morning is Donovan Patrick Mahoney, who is a very dear and long-standing friend of mine and almost like a brother to me. And he is from the yoga community, and people are like, another yoga teacher. It's like, okay, guys, it's not just about yoga. but that's how I met him. But I met him very much through that kind of society and learned a lot about his story, and we just immediately had a connection through art and photography, through human existence and life, and just adversity and overcoming marginalization of our communities. And there's a lot more where that has come from as well. So because Don's already here, I'm going to let Don introduce himself because he's got a lot more than I could articulate. And I think it would be much more appropriate for him to introduce himself. So Don, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Take your time. Take your time. It's very much like living group talk. So
yeah,
nothing formal here.
I try to do life like that though, like so that it's not stuffy and
Exactly.
like even I think like when I started teaching yoga, it was like really important for me to just be me. Like I didn't know, like I knew there was like this big yoga community that like a lot of people know Sanskrit. A lot of people know like everything there is about mythology and stuff like that. That wasn't me. But I wanted to teach yoga because there was something that was different, that was missing for me, that I felt like I could offer. And so when I went into that space, like I was like, I'm just going to still be me. And I know like I'd walk into it, like I'd be subbing for a teacher and you could just see the look on people's face, like a certain amount of disdain. And I'd be like, good morning. Hey, I just want you to know, I'm not here to make you mad. And like, people would be like, just super confused. And I'd be like, I know if I was you, I would be pretty upset right now if I came here and I was expecting to see Cheryl. And then this guy walked in and he walked to the front of the room and turned out to be the teacher because like, I don't look like that. And because I felt like there was also this thing, like I had to break the ice coming into this space where, a lot of people don't know that they're judging, like right out the box. Like a lot of people don't know just how angry they are. And so for me, that was like something that I could, like, just coming from my background. And what is my background? I mean, I've learned a lot of things from a lot of amazing teachers that are well studied in psychology. And I learned that through my own struggles. So like, I was in therapy when I was 9. I started seeing a psychologist and, ended up in group therapy and group homes and personal development programs and treatment centers. And so all of that stuff, when I got to yoga, seemed like, oh, wow, like I've been doing all of this yoga stuff just differently. So we're all doing the same work. It just looks different, And so yeah, it was to me, it was just like, okay, like I can bring myself in here. I can maintain who I am. Like this morning, of course, I just do everything right to like maximize every minute. Like I literally was like told that I was on the phone with ICBC and I said, hey, I got 2 minutes left. I got to be on this other thing. So, like if there's anything left we got to talk about, it's going to need to be through email. And like, it was she was like, okay, that's great. Like, actually that's better for me. And I'm like, yeah, me too. Okay, gotta go. And then I'm like, well, I should put a hat on and slap my phone on my gimbal so that it's stabilized. And that way, like if I have to move around, because I'm going to need some water and coffee, and I can do that. And it won't be like choppy, footage and stuff like that. But so I don't know. Basically, I'm just a human being. I'm 45 years old. I'm a middle-aged man now, like, which I just woke up to, it seems like. And, other people have a whole bunch of labels for me. One of them being that I'm Northwest Coast Indian. And other people say that I'm First Nations, and other people will say, oh no, you know, Donovan, he's a photographer. And other people will say that, you know, Donovan, he's a keynote speaker, and on and on and on. And so you guys get the point. But like, really, I'm a human being. Like, this is it, right? Like, I woke up this morning and today is a no day. Like, I mean, I don't consider the stuff that I do who I am. Exactly. This is just an expression of what's inside. Yeah, you know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, complete sense. Donovan, this is exactly the kind of chat we want to have on this show. Like we definitely do. You know, even as in our description or show notes, yes, this person is known for this, or they have this label, but we want to get, you know, more down into peeling all those layers off and seeing the true and real you. And thank you for sharing that about your yoga. So how long have you been a yoga teacher for now?
So I did the 200-hour teacher training in 2013.
Oh yeah.
With Y Yoga.
Yep.
And I stumbled in, and it's good that I waited till 2013, because I remember doing my first Bikram class in 2008.
Oh wow. And
being like, you know, I remember being so overwhelmed by these Bikram teachers. Like, how did they remember all this stuff? and it was because, you know, they studied for a long time. And I didn't do teacher training till, so whatever, it was 5 years later. But when I went to teacher training, I wasn't overwhelmed. Like, I had already done so much yoga that when I went into the class and they were talking about stuff, I was like, oh, this isn't really like teacher training. Like, I'm not going to be a teacher out of this. Like, I'm like, I don't know, just going over like what I know, and then, you know, hopefully going to stand up in front of a bunch of people and be able to remember all of that stuff and bring people through an experience where they would be like, oh, like, you know, for that hour, I wasn't tripping out in the future. For that hour, I wasn't dwelling in the past. So, yeah, so 2013, 200 hours. And then I went on to do, because I knew, like, I mean, actually, so right at the day of the test, the exam, I didn't make it out of bed. I laid on my bed with my feet on the floor, just kind of contemplating whether I was going to kill myself or not. And yeah, it was like really harsh, right? And I just was like, who the fuck do I think I am? Like, you know, gonna go and be a teacher. Like, I am not a teacher. And I walked very slowly that day to Vancouver General Hospital and walked in and told them, like, hey, like, I'm really not doing well. And they were the worst. They were actually the worst. They were like, well, so what do you mean? And I'm like, well, do you know, like, suicidal ideation? I said, I guess that's where I'm at right now, because I'm contemplating, like, I think my best right now is to walk in front of a bus, and that's just because I was supposed to take a yoga exam.
Right.
And the lady was like, yeah, she's like, yeah, just go have a seat. And I sat there for 5 hours. What? And you know, and I was like, okay, like, what does this mean? Like, this isn't at me. This is again just an opportunity just to learn. And the guy that came in that was the psychiatrist was, he was really intense and super scary. And I ended up like just kind of going like, hey, you know, like, I'm gonna go because I feel safer not here around you. And I'd think about a different profession. So yeah, that was my 200 hours. I went home and then I didn't get the courage to call up Y Yoga for, I think it was close to almost half a year.
Oh.
And I only did it to like impress the girl that I was with. I was like, and she didn't know like all that stuff. And I was like, yeah, like I'll just go back and be a yoga teacher. And I called up Why Yoga, and I managed to make a scenario for myself where I got to, like I paid a lot of money, but I paid one-on-one with a teacher who I was so happy to give the money to. Like I was like, let's do this. And you walk me through this exam. And she was like, you know how to do this stuff. I think there's something else going on for you. And that's, yeah. So she did the exam with me 1-to-1, and it was all verbal. And
Beautiful.
that's how, yeah. So that's how I ended up passing. And it was like a really, like, at the end of that experience too, for Kirsten, she told me, she said it was such an amazing experience for her because she just was assuming so much about people that come into her space. And I'm a person, at that time, I think I was 220 pounds and just a lot of muscle, and also like a lot of fat too, and some water, like a ton of water, like 85% of that was water. And so I just don't look like somebody, and just because of the face that I was born with, it looks like it's okay, or pissed off mostly all the time, just really angry. And which is not, like, cause I'm not angry all the time. I mean, it was, definitely. But so yeah, it was like a very cool experience for me and for her. And she told me that she went on to change everything that she did in the way that she ran teacher trainings after that.
Wow.
And which, like, okay, so like, let's back it up. That wasn't me. That was a total accident. Like, I needed that help. I was able to, by the grace of like some inner spirit that came out and was able to articulate, this is the kind of help that I need. And so, because a lot of people don't have that skill. Like, I know a lot of people, probably in those teacher trainings, they don't say anything and they're suffering and they're like thinking that everybody in there has it going on, and nobody does. Not one person in there. Doesn't matter if they're standing at the front of the room. Actually, it's like a lot of times that girl that's doing standing splits at the front of the room doesn't have it going on, that it was just like,
yeah.
because, she's got a dancer background and physically gifted, but like, when it comes to like, no, like we're all having the exact same experience, but for some reason, Kirsten's experience was, all the students know what's going on, and all the other students know what's going on. Fucking nobody knows what's going on.
Oh, no.
But nobody says it. Nobody walks into like, their first day at job and does anyone know what's going on? And like somebody honestly says, I have no idea. Like I've been fluking it for 5 years here.
Yeah.
But like, I'll kind of tell you like what I know,
Absolutely.
So.
And unfortunately, like, social media and all those things don't help. And it's funny because both Hero and I have gone through our teacher training, and even when I was going through my teacher training, I remember at the end of it, I did it through Open Door. So when I finished it, I just remember being like, what does a yoga teacher look like? And everybody, all the women specifically, or the girls, were trying to be like, at that time, Megan Curry.
Yeah.
They were all trying to be this, leg up here, one leg up here, one leg, like, in extended crazy splits. And that was yoga. And it's sad to me that yoga, which is kind of, well, it's supposed to preach this be yourself and it's not really like that in Vancouver still, I feel. But Donovan, you're still pretty integrated in the yoga community, are you not?
Well, I stepped out.
Okay.
I stepped out from 2016, like from the Vancouver community,
Okay.
in 2016, and I was fortunate enough to find work that was like that I was super into, like, so working in addictions. I went to Thailand, and
Wow.
yeah, so I ended up in Thailand, and I went and worked in a luxury drug and alcohol treatment center. So I kind of clipped like it wasn't like clipping my ties. It was just kind of, I went in and I told, Kelly, and I think it was Amy at the time, that I'd found different work and that I'd be leaving in the fall. And so that fall of 2016 was when I stepped out of teaching in public classes in Vancouver. I mean, obviously, like, my friends are mostly, like, a lot of my friends, like, obviously, like Hero and stuff from that yoga community. But no, I wanted to backtrack just for a sec, because there was something you said about like what you thought you should look like.
Yep.
And I was so close in my first Bikram's class to never going back to yoga, because when I walked in, I thought that yoga, like, there would be a guru in like some sort of robe.
Yep.
And I was just like, this is disgusting. Like, this is so disgusting that there's not even a guru here. But I didn't know anything about like, I did nothing. And so, like, I mean, it was a few more classes that I went to before I like actually went to who ended up being one of my greatest yoga teachers, was Tanya. And I said, like, why do you guys just, like, you're wearing these, like, little sweatpants and stuff, like, you're like, where's, and she was like, I don't know how to answer that question. So yeah, it's just so funny, like, whatever we, what we think, like, like, you should look like, what does a psychologist look like what does a photographer look like? And it just gets us in the biggest amount of trouble.
Well, and sorry, here I'm like asking all the questions, but
Oh, it's fine. I'm enjoying this.
no, but I just it's funny because now I'm going to be someone who maybe labeled you what I'm about to say, but I was surprised to hear that you seem to me like someone who is kind of like anti corporation or those kind of, and you went through why yoga, and I was like, really? That was and I just, why yoga still to me has such a sour taste in my mouth from it. And but it's, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
No, I get it. Like, I'm just messing around with my screen, but I just noticed that you guys are horizontal and I'm the only one here vertical. So
but not
now we should all.
Oh. It looks perfect on our end.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
It looks good now. Yeah, it looks good now. Yeah, you're perfectly set up.
I think, like, one of the things for me in teaching and doing all of these things was that over the years, like, nothing is what I want it to be.
Yeah.
And when I'm trying to make other people wrong is when I suffer the most.
Mm.
And so, like, years ago, like, I accepted there are certain things that I have to do. Like, I mean, I don't agree with ICBC. I think they're the biggest fucking gangsters in the country right now. Mm-hmm. I went in, I'll give you an example. I went into ICBC last week thinking that I had a $512 ticket to pay, which, by the way, wasn't a real ticket. That was a ticket that was made up that if I could have showed up to, I would have been able to contest.
Yeah.
But a certain amount of time had elapsed, which I didn't know about. and that ticket had doubled itself. So I said, they're like, oh, actually it's $1,150. And I don't understand like how that's above anything I've ever seen in terms of taxing. Like I know like gangsters, like real live people that did those kind of things, like where they're like, you know what, like you owe me a little bit more now because you're late. And these guys, I'd never seen this kind of maturation before, like where I was just like, so she just says to me, she said, well, it's because you occurred some points. And I said some points. So yeah, so I said to her, so wait a sec. So the ticket that I got wasn't enough. Like the original ticket that I expected to pay, but somehow you're managing to find a way to give me a ticket for the ticket that I already received.
Wow.
And she was like, so it gets really interesting here. Like, because I also view those people in those organizations like they're not human beings. And so I stopped talking because I felt that I didn't have the capacity to be myself anymore. I didn't feel like I had the capacity to be the kind of person that I want to be every day. So I just kind of stopped. And so I said, okay, so that's the end of that. And I said, is there anything else? Because I can't pay that. And she said, no. And she said some other things, I don't know. And she went to hand me my license, and I just reached over and grabbed it. And I turned around and walked away without saying anything, which the way she experienced it was like, she tipped. I've never seen anybody in this, in one of those places lose it for what they were doing, because I've always wondered how they work in there. Like, how do you do that to somebody? Do you know what I mean? Like, even if that's your job, like, I don't think I could tell somebody that, yeah, you just went from a $500 ticket to like losing rent. Like, I just couldn't do that.
Oh.
And so as I'm walking away, I just hear her flipping out. I can't fucking handle this anymore. I'm not going to be it. I hate this job. I won't be here tomorrow. And I was just like, yeah, girl, like you should like find another job, because this is so bad for you. I didn't say anything. Like, I just was like, but it was also like, I wanted to go back and tell her that, but then I realized that wasn't about me. That was like many of those experiences where she finally got to a place where she broke.
Yep.
And so back to the why yoga thing, no, like, I've had, many horrendous experiences in that organization. But at the same time, like, they've offered me an opportunity to teach and to grow. And I don't know if they know that. It's none of my business whether they think like, oh, like Donovan's going to be the best version he is going to be because we pay him less money than he would make having a regular job at coffee, like at a coffee shop. And that was like one of the reasons why I left, because like at the end of the day, like when I would start to look at, because I'm like, Hero knows me. I just think like, I don't think like just, oh, like there's a piece of wood. I'm like, wow, like I wonder who did that. And I wonder who went into the forest. And right. I wonder if like that was a seed that was planted, like whereabouts in the, like I'm just mental when it comes to certain types of thinking. And so I remember there was a day like where I had shown up for 2 classes and I felt like I wasn't really treated very well. And I went outside and I was like, wait a sec. So I'm getting paid $40 for this 1 hour class. That's not 1 hour. It's actually like, it's taking me about 2 hours inside of the studio space. It takes me a half an hour to get there. It takes me a half an hour to get home. So this like is like adding up, and I'm like, wait, there's more to this. Like, what am I not seeing? And then I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I do my own taxes. I have to, like, at the end of the year, like, sift through all of this stuff and try to find ways to claw back a little bit of money. And so at the end of the day, it looked like I was making somewhere around $8 an hour. And I was just like,
Oh yeah.
But then, like, I, like, I would go to these teacher trainings, like Bernie, I remember doing Bernie Clark's yin training,
Oh,
and there's 32 people in the class, and everybody's paid $1,000 for 5 days. And I'm like, so wait, $32,000? This guy just clocked in, like, and I'm like, okay, so I'm not really, like, there is ways,
yep.
but I'm like, also, like, is this a monetary thing? Like, how can I do this without making about money? And it was weird. Like, as soon as I started thinking like that, it was like literally like the thing in Thailand was like, boom. And this guy messaged me, hey, like, would you be interested in, like, teaching here at this luxury drug and alcohol treatment center? And I was like, I'm like, you're kidding, right? I'm like, I've never thought about Thailand in my life. Like, never, not once up until 2016 in fleeting, like, oh, that was filmed in Thailand. Like, that was it. Like, I never thought about, like, I always thought about Mexico,
Had you traveled much prior to? No, not really.
Well, I mean, I'd really started traveling in 2013. Yeah, 2000. So 2011 was, I got a passport and I went to Jamaica, and I was like, whoa, like, I was freaked out, and then it gained momentum. What's also interesting about traveling is, I should say that recently I just talked to my physiotherapist, and we're having a conversation. I said, he goes, we just need to be grateful that we've done so much traveling, because there's people right now that are freaking out that never traveled, and they're wondering if they're ever going to travel again. And I was like, wait a minute, no, everybody's not doing what we're doing. And he was like, and like, people would ask me, like, how I was doing it, and I was just like, I don't own anything, and I go, like, I take major risks.
Yes.
But yeah, so when I got over there and I went to this luxury drug and alcohol treatment center to teach, and they're like, we'll pay you a regular, like, a salary. And I'm like, oh wait, so I'm going to teach 13 times this week, but you're going to, like, pay me like a real wage, but in Thailand, which is crazy. So it's like, you're all of a sudden making drug dealer money, right? Like, so, because, like, the cost of living is so low, and which is also, you start, like, it's, there's so much to discuss, guys. Like, it's, because you think, like, yay, I'm making so much money. And then you go out and buy, like, something that would be normal to us. Like, I bought this motorcycle. It was a 650. You would never take a second look at it here. But in Thailand, I remember pulling up to the lights, and I was in a tank top and cut off shorts, which is totally inappropriate. And I didn't know that. And I'm on this, like, this bike, and I'm like, I'm looking around, and everybody's, like, staring at me. And I'm like, I look around, no Thai people are on that bike. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm the guy in the Lamborghini in Vancouver.
Oh,
and I'm like,
yeah,
I got rid of that bike, like, within a few weeks of that. I got a scooter.
yeah.
I started wearing regular appropriate t-shirts. I did, however, get another bike, but it was more appropriate to being out there. And it turns out I was really satisfied. Like, I had this little 250, and it was super sweet. It was kind of like a dirt bike enduro kind of thing. And, but that would be like middle class there.
Right.
Right. So I felt like more like, okay, cool. So, to backtrack, to get on track with this, like, making money over there and making the wage that I felt like I was worth, but then all of a sudden realizing that, like other people are, like, struggling because of it. Like, that just, I had so much painful, like, times in Thailand making the craziest amount of money. Like there was days where I made like $1,000 a day and working with these people. And that's, and I was having supervision. I went to this other person. I said, like, I'm like, I feel weird about this. Like, it feels like I'm attached to the money. Like I'm scared of losing it. And I want to be like these people with Learjets and everything. And he said to me, he goes, well, the thing is that these people require a certain kind of service. And if you don't charge them that, they won't think it's worth anything. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, this is like, what is going on in the world? Like in order to feel like you're getting something, you have to pay a crazy amount of money, like enough money to change 500 people's lives in that region for a year.
Yeah.
And like, I couldn't get my head around it. And, I think like, so, to backtrack to get back to this why yoga thing, like I've always kind of felt like, well, what do? I got to find a way to like work in these places, work in the world and do the good work that I think needs to be done in the world. And sometimes that's going to be in not like the most ideal places because, like it is what it is. Like one of my counselors, like this guy that I really, really respect, he now does like the addictions in this oil company. And he gets paid crazy money. And he was like, listen, he's like, it's one of these things where, yeah, it's gross. It's going to continue on. But if I can go in there and make a difference in a few men's and women's lives, then that's a big deal because no one else is going in there and doing it. And if that's what comes along with it, that I get a certain amount of money, okay, fair enough. Like I can go into the world and find things to do with that money that are appropriate. And you know what? That guy lives so modestly, like you wouldn't even believe it. Like the guy wears the same clothes every day. He's just like, and he lives that Zen life. Like he's not, just because he's making six figures or something like that a year isn't being, over the top, right?
Yeah, he's not living lavishly.
What I found is like when I started to really think about money too much when I was teaching yoga because I couldn't survive being a full-time yoga teacher in Vancouver, on and on, it started to really affect the way I taught because I was so affected emotionally and mentally by this elephant in the room of like, oh my God, how am I going to put gas in my car, on and on and on? How am I going to pay my rent? That it affected the way it did affect the way I taught. Cause my heart bleeds out of my body where I wear my heart on my sleeve. I can't keep that to myself. Like you can see it emotionally on my face. You can see it, so I found that very difficult. And then I just didn't really want to teach anymore. So did it affect how you taught? Or even on the opposite side of the spectrum, like when you were making a lot of money, did it kind of affect your...
I've always had maximum faith in like whatever I do. And so the thing is it's not just like, I have to go deeper and think bigger than like just, okay, where am I working? Like, I have to think like, wait a sec, like when I go to the pump, and I'm paying $2 a liter for gas, which I was 2 years ago. Wait a sec. Like that's also like our government in BC. That's something that I have control over. And, or some say it, like whether I think that or not, that the rent that I pay, the mortgages, like all this, the cost of living is also something that's my responsibility. And a lot of things right now are happening in the world where we get hooked by one particular thing and we say, it's this thing, it's this particular person, place, organization that's the problem. But then when you think like on a bigger scale, and then you're like, wait a sec, this is my problem. This isn't anybody else's problem. And it's not to say like, okay, like, it's not to say that what big gas and the housing and these corporations like Y Yoga and TELUS and ICBC and like it goes big and big and big and big and big and big and bigger and bigger, that I can take that on. It's not that. It's just like, okay, like, can I have the courage to do something and in a way that will start to like shift that? And like a few weeks ago, like, I don't know if you guys saw it, but there was a Reddit thread. I didn't see it. I was not aware of it. It was like way above my pay grade, but basically, as I understand it, you know, a few hundred people put together a little bit of money and they went and they broke Wall Street. And it was just a bunch of people with a little bit of money, not a lot. They didn't have millions, they didn't have billions, and they changed it. They changed everything forever. And so we have that same ability in Vancouver to collectively, as yoga teachers, as human beings, as citizens of the city, as consumers, because like that's what we're consuming, gas, all of those things, to say, you know what? I wonder what would happen if all 65,000 of us said today, like, let's not go to work. Let's shut off our phones. Let's not pay rent this month. Let's not pay the mortgage. Let's not participate in this anymore, and trust that we'll take care of each other and that the world is there to provide for us. And it always has. Like, this stuff isn't worth anything. We make it worth something. So the minute that you take your vote away from that, it changes everything. And so, I mean, I said back in 2016, not that I'm super intelligent, not that I'm super smart or anything like that, but I remember doing this project for City Hall. City of Vancouver hired me to do a social media program, and they wanted me to speak truthfully and honestly. And they said, well, we want you to do, I think I'm going to take a guess, it was like 11 posts or 10 posts or something like that. And you'll use the hashtag Healthy City for All. And I was at this meeting at City Hall, and I'm like, you guys know, like, I go downtown East Side and I talk about like what's broken. And I talk about like my own addictions and being homeless and being all of these things. And they're like, yeah, but like, we need somebody to do that. And I'm like, so you guys could do it. I'm like, okay. So I think like within like a few weeks, and I was in Ecuador doing this, doing these posts, and I said, like, I think I said on Twitter, like, everybody should just quit their jobs, basically exactly what I said to you.
Yeah.
But then in another different chat, I said to these people, I said, imagine if everybody like the 20,000 people just didn't go to the Canucks games every day for the year. And all of the people that watch the Canucks took every cent, calculated their hourly rate with the amount that they think about it, took all of that energy. And I said, we wouldn't be in this situation. The Canucks fans could fix everything in like a season, like literally in a season with their money alone, like nobody else is there. The Canucks fans were like, you know what? Like, let's like fix this. Instead of like watching these like $1 billion people like run around on the ice, like getting paid gazillions while we struggle, and cheering them on, and then being really sad because they lost, like, oh, they lost again. They could do something so positive and so mind-blowing that like the world would just stop and just go, holy shit, the fucking Canucks fans are on their like a different level of people. Like they would make Gandhi look like the devil.
Totally. No, it's true though. And
Excuse me.
Don, so when you're talking about all these things, again, it all links in. And I know you've mentioned a couple times being homeless, and then of course, living and recovering from addiction and usage of substances and so forth, as well as photography and media. I'm curious to know if you would be willing to kind of take it back to as early as you're comfortable about your life, because you might not be comfortable talking about certain things. But I'm curious to know, for those that don't know who you are, and probably I don't know a lot about your childhood, what are you comfortable talking about from as early as you can remember, and like those steps that got you to where you are now? Like, how did all
Well,
this
we don't
start?
even have to go back that far. Like, so this house that I'm in that looks so beautiful
Yeah.
is not my house.
Yeah.
I am just a guest here. Maybe till the end of this week. Like, this wasn't ever going to be where I live. Um, 43 days ago, 44 days ago, I was homeless and wired to heroin. So this guy that presents well, like again, remember Kirsten Campbell, like just looked at me like somebody that had it going on. Again, like I may be able to speak and talk and say these things that sound all
Profound.
well and good,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean anything to like what, how am I doing? Like currently right now, like I'm doing really well. Um, and I remember a few years ago, this guy that killed himself in Victoria, he was also a yoga teacher.
Michael
And
Michael Stone.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it freaked the shit out of me because he said, I think in his suicide letter, like, or something like that, I'd heard that he had gotten so frustrated with the amount of meditation, the amount of yoga, the amount of service, the amount of everything. And he couldn't get past this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been my experience, like, is that I went into all of everything that I've done. I stopped doing drugs. I got housed. I started making money. I started like a 2 hour a day meditation practice. I've done, week-long silent meditation retreats. I've taught around the world. I've done all of these things. But that guy quit in August and ended up in so I ended up homeless in, so it was September. Was it September? Oh, it must have been October. I can't, it's all kind of a little bit blurry, but a series of things happened that were out of my control where I ended up in the hospital. And at the time I was struggling with drug dependence.
Oh no.
My own kind of painkillers, because I was like, well, this painkiller that they're giving me, I don't feel like myself and actually want to die. So I would prefer to do heroin because if it's doing the same thing. And so if morphine is heroin and Oxycontin is, the same thing as fentanyl, like, why wouldn't I just do that? So I was struggling secretly and not telling anybody. And I ended up in the hospital and my landlord decided to report me missing. He didn't know that that's what was going on. But at the time I was crippled. I couldn't walk. And I had like a mobility scooter. And, and so he reported me missing and rented out my place. And I found out when I was in the hospital.
Oh my God.
And so what I heard was that, yes, of course, I don't deserve anything more than to live on the street. And because that's like addiction, that's a shame, that's guilt. So I didn't fight it. I just kind of was like, oh, okay. And I went to the street, and because I wasn't like me, like the guy that you see right now, like I have access to my full brain.
Mm-hmm.
At that time I didn't. And I was also, so addiction, like as people, I prefer to call it dependency. But that's just another form of mental health, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I ended up homeless. And you know, it's interesting now because like here I am and I'm having this really profound talk with you guys, and I'm so like sharp and I feel fantastic. Um but like, you know, I just because at this particular moment I'm doing a lot of things to take care of myself. I have so much support. But that is been over the years like a fluctuation. And and so to kind of get back to like what Hero said, like it's it does track back somewhere. Like, why does a person that is physically, mentally, and emotionally gifted, that's what I've been told,
Yeah.
why does that person choose or yeah, choose to um to live suicidally? Like, I've always taken major risks, and I had to like track that back to my childhood and realize that like, oh, like I didn't recognize love as love because it love to me was shelter insecurity. Love to me was food insecurity. Love to me was violence. And so being indigenous and being native, being Indian, whatever you want to call it, whoever's right, um, I did go through some stuff that I didn't know happened. You know, my mom, I didn't know that she had been abused. I didn't know that the government had done all these things that were so horrendous. And, you know, so what it was like Christmas Eve 1981, me and my dad were leaving his friend's house Christmas Eve, 13 days after my sister was born, and he took a spill down the stairs. He was wasted and he died in front of me. And then a year and a half later, my mom's best thinking was that the only chance that her kids had was if she killed herself. And so it kicked off like this whole scenario for my life, like where um, people, I ended up in situations where people just looked at me and said, oh, like, look at this beautiful boy. My mom and dad, like my adopted parents. And my mom had no clue what was underneath that. Like, the social workers didn't tell her like that I had been left alone to fend for me and my sister when I was 5. Um, and they didn't know why, like I was running away when I was 9, like
Wow.
in preferring to live in a Salvation Army box. Like, I would run away from my adopted family and I would go downtown in Courtenay. So I got relocated,
Yeah.
which is a whole other issue unto itself, right? There was a big lawsuit that apparently I missed the deadline on, even though it's my trauma. So that was called the 60s scoop. And that was basically all the Indigenous kids that got adopted out from Native families to non-Indigenous families, right?
Yeah.
There was the biggest lawsuit in history. And last year I found out that I missed the deadline for that. But I'm like, how did you guys collect a couple $1 billion, Klein and Lines or whatever, but somehow I got left out of this? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So now I have to do my own lawsuit. Another thing. But anyways, so, you know, like I end up in this like living this life that nobody can tell me like why does it feel bad for me when breakfast, lunch, and supper are at 9, noon, and 5? Why does it feel abusive when there's place settings at a dinner table and collectively a family eats together?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there was so many things that I didn't understand, and then I had to come to learn about later in life, because you got to remember, like, I was born in 1975. There was no talk of mental health. There was no talk. Like, there was still gay bashing. Like, the people that adopted me, were home, like the people in that time, like the comedies that I watch. If you go back and watch the comedies, go watch Eddie Murphy's Delirious. You'll fucking shit your pants. You'll just be like, I
Yeah.
can't believe I used to laugh. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like I remember that being the funniest comedy. And then Raw, like, do you know how many women, if they saw that right now, would just be like, that guy would be dead.
Well,
That guy wouldn't be, it wouldn't be like a little thing. It would be like on CNN, like 25,000 women lynched Eddie Murphy. Like, but that was totally normal.
even like Married with Children, like those any of those kinds of shows. I was showing that to my very young sister-in-law who's in her early 20s, and she's like, this shit actually, people got away with saying this shit. Like how? I'm like, yeah, they did it. It was normal, and
It was totally normal.
and it was accepted, and I totally hear you about mental health. None of that was talked about, and unfortunately during your formative years, it was none of it was talked about. None of it was I mean, trauma is real, and trauma lives with us. And not only that, but Donovan, like Hero and I have talked about a number of times on this show about intergenerational trauma, things that are like, basically you're essentially almost born with, not almost, like you are.
Yep, you are. Yep.
Both Hero and I coming from Holocaust survivor grandparents, and all that stuff that, lives in our DNA. And how do you deal with that? I mean, it sounds like you have the same exact, I think everyone does to a certain extent, but
yeah. Well, I mean, so I'm dealing with so much of that stuff. Like in the last 10 years, it was like I hit 35 and my body realized that it was safe. It's like when you have a broken down car and then you finally, like, it gets to its destination, you turn it off and then it's like finished. It's totally finished. So 2012, blew my Achilles. 2014, I had my hip replaced, my first hip replacement, my right hip. 2016, my right shoulder, full reconstruction. So that was bicep fully gone, rotator cuff fully gone. Oh. So full reconstruction of that. And then 2019, I came back from Thailand for surgery on my left hip. We all think that our emotions, like I used to say in my classes that it was like, men, and I often like to say men so that it's because I can just identify with me and I don't piss off any women in the class. But I would say men think about their emotions out here. So like that really bad experience with ICBC happened somewhere out there. And that thing that's going on with my partner is over there. But it isn't. We know that, like, so you're in a fight with your partner, some shit's going bad, they start to yell, scream, you guys get too close, you feel it, right? Like you feel it. Mm-hmm. And there's so much intelligence in the body. Like nobody ever says, this is like so bonkers to me, is that like, we just say, oh yeah, like you broke your leg, you cast it and give it 6 weeks to heal. What a dumb way to say something that's so magnificent. Like, this is so bonkers. The body doesn't get told like how to, because we couldn't figure that out on our own. Like, there's no possible way. But then it's like, oh, like, what about, where does all that trauma go? Like, well, It goes in here, but if you give the body space, which is meditation, like that stillness, when you get still and you get quiet and you stop moving, stop doing stuff, stop asking the body to do stuff for you, the body's like, okay, cool. I can finally do what really needs, and it gets down to business. So people that go and do week-long meditation retreats, within the first couple of days, you see them, they're laid out on the floor, they're in mega pain because they were so checked out, they didn't know. that stuff doesn't go out of your body. Like that experience that you had on the ferry where you just about got into a fist fight with somebody didn't go out into the ocean. That went into somewhere in your body where your body was like, okay, we just got to get, this guy just keeps going. So we got to do something. Just put it here, put it there, keep going because we got shit to do and money to make. And that's like, and the body's like, okay, like, yeah, whatever. Like, we're going to pay the bad price at some point here. Yeah. And then, you know, eventually like men have strokes, have heart attacks and all this when they're 40s and they say, oh, like it was this, it was that. And it's like, yeah, maybe not. So for me, the generational trauma, and not even like just generational, like I was just on the street for the past 6 months or past 4 months of the year. Like I saw some shit, like I did some bad things to myself. Like your body doesn't not see somebody that it recognizes as dead. And right now in Vancouver, we've normalized people that look dead. It's like, oh, like people have to go to work. They're going to work and they're just like, and they're wondering why it's so hard. Like, why is today so hard? Well, you just saw somebody that looked like they were dead, and in your soul was like so sad and it was so hurt. But your mind, it's got money to make and all this stuff it's got to do, just says like, you know, disregards it. Mm-hmm. And so we're like, you know, constantly every day being traumatized, like whatever it is. And then unfortunately people were not a well-studied bunch of beings on this planet right now, you know, like where right now, like if I'm having difficulties in my living environment, if I'm having difficulties in my work relationships, it's not their fault. No. It's not them. I have to like step back and be like, you know, okay, what am I saying? What am I doing? Like whatever. And then if maybe I am right, then I don't need to make the other person wrong. What I need to do is I need to give that person the space to figure out their own stuff and sort of say, okay, like I will clear out and let you figure everything out on your own. Yeah. Because when I make people wrong is when I traumatize myself. When I make people wrong is when I suffer the most. When I try to control everything, I suffer. Like when, like every relationship in my life I can look at and say it failed miserably because I tried to control it. I was upset, blah, blah, blah. But then I can look at my dog and be like, wow, like I never tried to control my dog. I never tried to control my cat. Like all I do to that thing is I love it. I just love it so much. It just took a shit right in the, and I'm just like, oh, you, I can't believe you just shit. Like, I hope like one day, you know, you stop shit in the middle of the living room and you go over and you do the nastiest thing, the most compassionate, most unreal thing. Like if people can treat human beings like that and be so compassionate, is to pick up their shit with love and just walk over and just be like, oh, look, I have fucking goosebumps right now because that's so real. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, okay. So when I stop controlling stuff, when I stop blaming everybody and I take responsibility and I live that love life, when I live compassion, when I live empathy for real, not just when under perfect circumstances, because that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because everybody's all about that fucking love life. Everybody's all about the 4 agreements until it becomes time to be impeccable with your word, until it becomes time to not take things personal, until it becomes time to do your best and really understand that today my best is different than yesterday because 5 of my relationships are under duress. Yesterday, I was in a car accident. I didn't eat well last night and I drank too much. I poisoned my temple. I ate poorly. Like
Yeah.
really take fucking responsibility for everything
Yeah.
and stop blaming, and then realize that, yeah, today my best is not doing any damage. Today, I'm just going to lay on the couch and do nothing, you know.
And not feel
I don't
fucking about it, man. Like,
know.
and
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, wow. I was going to ask actually, for how are humans, how are people doing on the downtown east side with COVID? How's
Fine.
yeah
Yeah.
being
Totally fine.
are they, well, I mean, and interestingly enough, so I just have to say, like, I actually don't live in Vancouver anymore. So I fucked off to the Okanagan. I live in Vernon, and I'm just like,
Beautiful.
I'm done with the city. There over the weekend, and long story short, I did a short walk in Gastown, and I was so used to the city for so long, and when I got out into Gastown, I almost had a panic attack because I was like, almost like I forgot what it was like down there, and like what you said, like my heart just for seeing people, and I was just so much more sensitive than I think I had been for so many years, where maybe I did turn a blind eye. I just got used to what was happening down in that area, and I was like, this is wow. Like it was good for me to kind of take myself out for a while, and then plunk yourself back in, and you're like, what the fuck? Anyway.
Yeah. I think like, everything is well and good down there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like I don't feel like this would be the appropriate space to just get into like that kind of conversation just around COVID, because there's just so much going on. Like it's such a loaded topic. Like the world right now is in this place where they're bent on making everyone else wrong. And all I know is that I can say that I just started wearing a mask like 42 days ago, and I lived on the street, like literally like lived on the street in back alleys. I didn't shower for, I think there was, I think the first time I had a shower was like in 3 months. Like it was real. And I never saw anyone get sick. And I'd been to the hospital like a lot.
Yeah.
And they would isolate me, and they would put me in these COVID units where like I didn't see anybody in those units. And then I was like moved to like regular units. So I just like, yeah, I don't know. I just know that, there's like people that go into the downtown east side every day from outside of that community, and those people don't get sick, and they seem to arrive every day to do work and do business. Like that community is so transient in the sense that people that don't know about the downtown east side, one of the big ways revenues is through the street market, and that market is kept going by outside money and energy. So there's a group of people that come into the downtown east side every day, and they support that community by buying whatever is brought to them, and then they take it out and then they sell it on the internet or whatever they do. And those people aren't struggling with mental health. They're not struggling with addiction. They're just people that found a way to make money in the downtown east side.
Yeah.
And so these people that are like not monitored, not governed, seem to come and go, and they're not getting sick. The people in the downtown east side aren't getting sick. But the one thing that is happening is every day I can tell you 100% that people are dying from opiates. People are dying from lack of care, so like my intention this year is like coming off the street is is it for me, the way that I experienced it was that I needed to do that. I didn't want to do that. It's not something that, but I learned so much when I went down there, and I was just like, oh wow, like I thought that I was doing something when I used to do these fundraisers and pizza drives and feed 400 people and get like 500 pairs of socks. I thought that I was doing something. I was doing something. And the people that used me as the vessel to go out and do good work in that community, we were changing the molecular structure of our body and going into the world and feeling good that we were doing something better. So that is not nothing, right?
Yes.
But what I did realize is that it is, you know, at best, I can hope that if I give somebody a pair of socks and I look them in the eyes and I don't say anything, I don't need to do anything, like, here you go, and I keep doing that, that person walks away and they say, oh man, like, see, like the world's not such a bad place to live in. Maybe the other side of not using, so like I'm using now, maybe getting housed, maybe doing all that stuff, like it's a daunting task, you know, to like try to find a place if you're not on drugs. Like, but people think like people that are homeless can just magically walk off the street and walk in somewhere and go, oh yeah, like I understand that huge piece of paper, fill it out and then like rent a place. No. But you know, people like me that somehow like I was able to like, you know, 15 years ago, like start to like do the work, and I came out of there because somebody did that for me. But that's, we, you know, I realized like when I was out there, it can be so much better than that. Like I'm bigger than fundraisers and bigger than pizza drives and stuff like that. And that's not to say that I'm some sort of god, but it's like I am 45, like I'm not too concerned about things anymore. You know, I have the courage to stop.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes, is it takes somebody to show everyone else like, hey, look, like, you know, you know, like you can be yourself and be fine. Totally. Because that's all that it really is. Like all's we need to do is be ourselves, take care of ourselves honestly, and the world will change. But when I say take care of ourselves, like people think that that's like, you know, getting a better job. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm like, really, like, stop feeling that feelings that you're having, like change it 100%. Like, you know, just, okay, like this doesn't work. Like whatever it is that we're doing right now does not work. So how do you do that? You stop everything, like wholeheartedly, like, okay, stopping. I'm going to stop participating.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, like Justin Trudeau and whoever this other guy is, Horgan or whatever his name is,
Yeah.
whatever, you know, all of a sudden they're just like, oh no, they're not doing, they're oh no, they're learning. Like, oh, we have to, so we can't just keep putting one over them. No, because they're not doing it. They just won't take it because they're not selling out anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and
that's it.
And scene. I love it.
Yes, exactly. Hero, go ahead.
What I was going to say, Dawn, is that one thing that we haven't kind of delved into fully is your background in art and photography, but not just the photography part, but the landscape of telling your story and other people's stories through capturing them in real states of their life, which also a lot of it includes that population that we just spoke about. And so I'm wondering about how has that been right now for you, and how has it developed, and where is it anywhere right now? Because I know I've seen on your social media that you've gone through cycles of having photography equipment and then not having it, and then I bought a set of it, and I still have it and use it here and there. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about that angle too. And then also, I know you've been in the Huffington Post, you've been in other press articles, you've had parts of your story told. And I know I'm really opening up another can of worms here, so you can shut me down whenever you like. But also the police situations as well that you've faced in the last 5 or 6 years, and the things you talked about that, and the propaganda you actually helped to shine a light on to hopefully change the way that people see how our police system, how our city treats people in marginalized populations. It's just absolutely absurd. So I'm whatever anything I just said, anything you're open to sharing about, I'm opening that up to you as well, and you can say no to any of it.
Okay, so I just have a question. What time is it?
10:07 a.m.
10:07. So I actually am going to have to go pretty quickly, but
No
I
problem.
will say that I'm more than happy to do another podcast with you guys if you guys are needing a guest.
Yes.
Some of these things that you're asking are like really, really, really big discussions.
Yeah.
I can just tell you right now that for the last almost 2 years, I'd stopped doing photography because I just wasn't physically capable of doing it. I was doing what I could with my drone. So I was doing drone photography, but I wasn't really doing a lot of street photography. And then everything kind of came to a head in October because we don't actually know what happened, but like my landlord rented my place out when it was my place, and everything in there went missing, and he had some of it. So that's all I can say, really. But I lost like all of, like my camera, my drone, all that stuff. And most importantly though, like was, it was just like the hard drives. I never imagined that I would lose external hard drives. And that was like all of the work that I had done since 2011. So now anything that's left is just on my Instagram. There's no actual real copies. But I finally got the courage to like get honest about my situation like last week and share with my community on Instagram, and people came through for me in a big way. Like, I was able to get a drone, get the equipment for the drone that I needed. This woman, incredible, like everybody's incredible. Like her, like I always like the stories, like why people want to participate in anything that I'm doing. That's the shit that really like kind of, it's hard to not, remember. Like, so this woman sent me a camera that, I went and looked online, and brand right now, that thing that she sent me was like $2,500. And she was like, yeah, it's slightly used. It wasn't used. It was,
Wow.
no. Oh, and then I should say, like, there was batteries. There was actually a different battery pack that it came with. So it was actually like $3,000. So she sent me that. And so I'll be going back to Vancouver hopefully, definitely by the end of this week. And then I'll be looking to, get a street lens, like a 35 millimeter, 2.8, or like a 55 millimeter, 1.8. And then I'll go back and I'll do that. And then maybe next time when we talk, then I can talk a bit about, what that looks like now, because I don't actually know. Like, I think like it's going to be different. Like it's, I've evolved so much with my ability to take photos. Like it's different than it was 6 years ago to now. Like, like my ability to just walk into like really places that would be kind of precarious and be comfortable and make people feel comfortable is just a different place. So, hopefully hopefully this year I'll be able to use that tool to start to change, like yeah, like my hope is, my goal is to like start to change policies and laws now. Like it's not to feed a couple people, it's not to give people some warm clothing, it's got to be bigger than that. So yeah.
Awesome.
Well, with that being said, Donovan, what can listeners, what can we do that actually, isn't necessarily just, going on the street and giving someone their coat? Like what can we do, or what can we do for you? Like, I feel like you're on the cusp of doing some really great things. And I know people can feel and sense that. And I think that's why they want to help you as well. And your spirit, I'm at a loss for words, to be honest.
I'm basically like where I need to be, like with terms of just, I think if anything, if people are interested in this podcast and what we are doing, Hero, yourself, myself, they can connect with us through social media. My main platform, and the only thing that I'm really going to focus on this year, is Instagram. Like I feel like I don't want to spread myself thin, and I want to do something that is like rich and meaningful. So I'm going to stop selling my energy. I'm going to stop selling my services, and I'm going to start putting that into that thing. And Instagram seems to cover all the bases. Like it's doing the kind of Snapchat stuff. It's doing the TikTok-y type stuff. It's doing the YouTube-y type stuff. Like it's not as powerful as YouTube yet by far. So I'm probably going to upload to YouTube. But yeah, it'll just be like, I think in this podcast link, it will just be to my Instagram, and people can search me on the internet, Donovan Patrick Mahoney with the right spelling. And then, if I'm doing something and I need support, that they'll be able to sort of get behind whatever that is, because currently, unless somebody wants to pick me up this week in Nanaimo with all my stuff and bring me to Vancouver, I don't need anything else. Like,
I love it. I love it. And are you planning to stay in Vancouver, or you want to be based in Vancouver?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Vancouver's home. Yeah, like it's
okay.
Like good. No matter what, it's I've gotten to that place like where I totally like hated it and everything like that, but I think like fasting, like when you go away from it and then you come back and you're like, oh yeah. So it's just, every relationship needs that. Every relationship needs space. Like, like if you're in a relationship with someone, go away for the weekend, leave them behind, and you'll like appreciate them so much more when you get back. Like if you're eating if you're struggling with food and you don't appreciate it, stop eating food for 24 hours. Like if you've lost the taste for life, stop moving, sit still for like an hour. You sit still for an hour, you'll get up and you'll be like, oh my God, yes. Like, you'll be excited. So it's just like when you refrain, all of a sudden you reset to that beginner's mind that we were when we were kids. The first time you picked up a skateboard, the first time you climbed a tree, the first time you did a handstand and you stuck your handstand, it was, So that's really about it, guys.
No, thank you. And when you're back in the city, I would love for us to go for a walk, grab a coffee. I would
absolutely
love to chat with you, and then hopefully we can set up a second, a part 2 for this conversation. And hopefully, I mean, of course, at your schedule and your comfort as well, but I would hopefully think in the next month, not more than the next couple of months, hopefully like in a month or so, we could follow up maybe.
Definitely. I'll always make time for this. So I'm going to end this. Thank you for letting me be of service and giving my life purpose.
Thank you so much for having us. Namaste.
Namaste. Satnam.
Have a good one, guys.
Okay. Thanks, Don. Talk to you soon. Be well.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.